Welcome. In this video I'm going to be solving the problem letters to numbers. There's a description of this, written description on the Moodle site, but just to read it out: if A equals 0, B equals 1, C equals 2 and so on for the entire alphabet. Given a piece of text, calculate the total value of all the letters given. Anything that is not a letter can be ignored. So something like BAD would give you an output of 4. And the extension challenge which we'll be doing is that capital letters should be worth 10 more than their lowercase parts. So where A equals 0, then capital A would be 10. Where B equals 1, capital B would be 11, and so on. Okay, so you can see here that I've just created a simple interface. I've got a label here for a heading. I've got a text input for my input string. I've got a button and a text area to output the final value. So let's have a look at the source. Okay, so to start typing our code, we start the fx script tag. And then we start working on our code. Okay, so I'm going to declare a variable for our input string, which we'll call S1. I'm going to declare a integer I, which we're going to use to loop through the input string. We'll just start it off at 0. We'll also declare a letter, which will be a string, just to hold a single letter at a time. We'll also have a variable for, just left off the var from the previous one. We'll also declare an integer called letter value, where we'll store the value of each letter, and we'll make that an int, and we'll give it a starting value of 0. We'll also declare a integer called total to store the total value of our string, and give that a starting value of 0. And we're also going to declare an array, which I'm going to call alpha array, short for alphabet, because it's going to store the whole alphabet in our array. So I'll define it as type array. I'll just type this out to make it a bit quicker. Okay, so it's an array that has all the letters of the alphabet all in lowercase. So remember with arrays that the first element in the array is always element 0. So A will be in the 0 box, B will be in the 1 box if you like, the C will be in the 2 box, and so you might see how we can use the index of this array to assign values to each letter. Okay, so there are our declared variables. Now we're also going to have a function which we will link with our button. So, sorry, we'll call it public function. Let's call it LNS, letters, LTS, letters to numbers. Sorry, LTN. And it's returning void. This doesn't return anything. Okay. Now, first thing we should do is go back to our design view, and we'll just link this button to our functions. Our functions LTN, open bracket, close bracket. Okay, so that will just mean that when we click the button, it'll call that function. We should also give our input box a name. So let's call it txt input. And let's give our output box the ID txt output. Okay, let's switch back to the source code. Alright, so the first thing we should do is store our input string into S1. So S1 is assigned txt input.text. Okay, we should reset our variables just in case this function's called a couple of times by a user. So let's just set total to 0 and I to 0. You don't need to put these semicolons that sort of have it that I do, just ends the line, but they're actually not compulsory in Flex. Alright, we're going to use a while loop to loop through our array. So because I is our variable to loop through the array, so we want to go through the entire length of S1. So we can actually use a inbuilt function called length, okay, which returns the length of a string. So we want to start it at 0 and move through the whole string. Okay, I'm just going to put a comment in to keep track of these end brackets. So this one is the end of my while loop. This one is the end of function LTN. That'll just help me not get confused about which bracket belongs where. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is isolate each letter. So the first letter, what we can do is we can say S1 dot, and we can use an inbuilt function called char at. Char's short for character. So we can do the character at position I, which the first time we run through this loop will be 0. So that'll be the first letter. And I'm also going to convert it to a lowercase, all in the one step. So because my whole array is all in lowercase, I want to convert this letter to lowercase, and then I'll deal with the situation where it's uppercase letter. I'll deal with that later on. Okay, so I've isolated each letter. Then what I need to do is search for that letter in our array and assign it a value. Now, because I've set up my array in alphabetical order, once I find the array, once I find the letter we're looking for in the array, the index of that position is its value. And that's because we've set up the array in that way. So what we can say is that the letter value is assigned to, and we're going to use a inbuilt function for arrays here. So alpha array, we're going to use the function index of. Okay, when you give index of a search element, so such as a letter, it will return to you the position of that item in the array, which is very handy for us in this situation. So we're going to give index of the variable letter, and it will give us back the index position. So in the case where we give it an A, it will return 0. If we give it B, it will return 1. If we give it C, it will return 2. And that's only because, and I can't stress this enough, that's only because we've set up the array in that way. Alright, now what we need to do is add the total, or to the total we add that letter value. So I could write total is assigned total plus letter value. Okay, I could write it like that, or a shorthand method, which I prefer, is I could also write total plus equals letter value. It actually does the same thing, just a shorthand way of writing it. Okay, we need to increment I, otherwise we'll end up with an endless loop. And that will actually loop through our whole array. And so every time we loop, we get the next letter, we find its position, we assign the letter value, we add that letter value to the total, and then we increment I. By the time we finish this loop, we'll have our total value, so we need to display it. So if we do text output dot text is assigned our total dot toString. Now the toString function converts the integer to a string so that we can display it. And that should work. Now this case will only work for lowercase letters at the moment. So let's test that. Let's just save it to see if we've got any errors. Now we do have a few errors here. Just a typo. Hopefully you spotted that earlier. Alright, so I'll just add that L. Let's save again. Okay, that looks like it's gotten rid of our errors. So let's go ahead and run this program. Alright, so let's test. So when we put in a lowercase a, we get 0, b, we get 1, c, we get 2. Okay, so if we enter in something like BAD, we get 4, which is correct. We'll enter in some of the other test cases in the given example. So AAA, BBB, CCC should give us 9, and ZAC should give us 27. Alright, so that's the basic problem. Now let's solve the extension task